program. Michael Krauser is the team leader. Unfortunately, he's not here today. And Impumelelo Award will also be presenting. So we're going to present half and half of the presentation. A little background with respect to the program. It's a partnership between the German Development Bank and the City of Cape Town, where there's a requirement for rand funding. And the objective of the program, or the goals of the program, is to upgrade low-income neighborhoods, to improve the socio-economic situation, and to improve safety. And that is achieved through a number of work streams, what we call situational crime prevention, which is a focus on the built environment, social crime prevention, a focus on victims and offenders and social cohesion, and institutional crime prevention, which looks at mainstreaming best practice. It looks at operations and maintenance and sustainability. I'll briefly talk about the methodology, because I think this is quite important. What we would look at is we would look at a geographic focus area. And a geographic focus area can be chosen for any number of reasons. So it could be a neighborhood within the community which is identified because of crime hotspots. It could be an area which is identified with economic potential. The reasons which underpin our work is predominantly violent crime. And what we're looking at is we're looking at 4 areas within Khayelitsha: Harare, Kuyasa, Site C, and Site B. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, because that, I think, is all in the package which we've provided you with. What I think one of the first steps we would do is we'd engage with the local community in the area, and we'd work with the local leadership and look at establishing a relationship. And that relationship is something which would last throughout the implementation of the program. We'd look at baseline analysis, and the methodology behind that is rapid urban appraisal. And we would start forming our partnership with the community during that analysis process. What we've done with our baseline analysis, we've looked at crime patterns and crime analysis with the community, what their views of it are. So not police statistics, but the views of the community with respect to crime hotspots, with respect to how crime's occurring, who are the victims, who are the perpetrators, and the patterns of crime. And then we'd look at local business. So we'd go and we'd do a complete coverage of the entire area, visit every single property, pick up each business, and then do an in-depth questionnaire with each business to pick up how they run business, what is business within the area, what are the threats, the opportunities, the gaps, and how can we stimulate local business. Then what we would look at with the community is to start prioritizing interventions. We've developed local strategies. So in Harare, you might have a social development strategy, a safety plan, a local economic development strategy, and we've developed perhaps a physical plan of what are the physical improvements which might be undertaken within the area. We'd then look at design, implementation. Up front, we would establish a set of indicators. What we've done in Khayelitsha, what emerged in the baseline survey process was we were working with some uncontracted CDWs who showed potential, and we gave them training. They formed a company called Lateta, and they're now doing the monitoring and evaluation in terms of agreed indicators within Khayelitsha. And they do 50 randomly selected household questionnaires per week, which is testing against our indicators for success or failure. Also testing the level of service delivery and service delivery satisfaction with respect to municipal services. So we're getting a constant feedback with respect to our program and with respect to general municipal work. And then I think a very important point here, sustainability through operations and maintenance. So this VPU program, the kind of product would consist of a package of physical interventions, so capital works, and it would consist of a package of, let's call it, softer type projects: investment in people, investment in social cohesion, investment in the local economy and training, etc. Now, so what's kind of emerged out of this program, which we didn't expect up front, is that in essence what we're doing within a community is coming up with a kind of mini integrated development plan. And that, fortunately, we're in a position where we're in control of quite large sums of money. So through this process of partnership, with the community, we're then able to form alliances with line departments and actually schedule budgets with line departments, but implement on a sustainable basis in an integrated fashion. Those two words are kind of catchwords within government. I don't think it's often achieved. We're going to look very briefly at Harare, and we're going to look at a precinct in the middle of Harare. This is the main pedestrian desire line running through from Monwabisi Park informal settlement through to Khayelitsha Station. And Gulelwa is going to take us through some slides which look at how that dangerous space where bodies were dumped has been positively occupied through implementation in this program.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. It's interesting that I've been sitting at the back and listening to all the presentations, and coincidentally, the presentation that has just been done, part of it is part of the safe node areas, Kuyasa, and therefore we have, Kuyasa has just been identified as one of the safe nodes too. So one of the interventions has been actually making sure that Kuyasa, Harare, Site C and Site B is one of the safe nodes. But I will focus mainly on what is called Precinct 3. I want to go back. I hope I'm going to be able to do so. I just want to put emphasis on this arrow going down. When actually this intervention started, one of the major questions that came up was that from the community, what is it that is different that is going to be done by this intervention as against all other interventions that have been done, because there have been Bambisanani project, there have been that project in terms of crime prevention. I must emphasize that what has been different about this intervention is that it actually looked at the causes in terms of societal causes and economic causes, and began to look at also infrastructural contributors in terms of crime. And then began to say, how do you make sure that there's effective participation and meaningful input from a planning stage, so that you actually begin to create trust and make sure that there's accountability that takes place as the project unfolds. So during feasibility study from 2005, there has been checks and balances that have been there, where basically when actually feasibility study was done, there was consultation process that was done very extensively. People were able to articulate what were the problems, what were the causes of crime, like Alistair was saying, and also how this crime can be reduced. And they came up with suggestion as to how they can even make sure that they can participate in making sure crime is reduced. And by so doing, then there was an attempt to make sure that partnership was created with community. And there is what is called Cultural Development Forum, and there was an effort to make sure that there was a meaningful partnership between the VPUU program and the Cultural Development Forum and the partners in terms of the international partners, so that it's just not a partnership that is cosmetic. Whenever there is a milestone that is actually going to be there, all partners come together and make sure that they actually discuss, agree on the approach that is going to be done, and make sure that they participate equally and there's equal respect all the time that takes place. So trust therefore began to be built, and people begin to take ownership in the process. So that those are the principles that are actually embedded in the intervention on the VPUU. So amongst in terms of the baseline study that came up, there has been also one of the critical things that has been highlighted is that whenever people actually travel to the station, they became victims. Their purses would be snatched, they would be killed, because in this area, this was actually called a water retention pond. And that water retention pond became a place where people would be dumped because water now would be there and the sewer system was not working properly. All sorts of not so nice things you would actually find there. And therefore then the program then said, how then do you make sure that we actually change this not so nice situation, because this is the shortcut people use when they go to the station and going to work in early hours of the morning and it's dark. And you can see this is the footpath people take when they come in and they're going to work. And then we actually engage the communities as to saying, how do you make sure that this route becomes safe? And this is the detention point I was making reference to, and make sure that communities participate to make sure that we change that situation. It becomes a safe area for people to travel in the morning and travel in the evening when they come and go to work and when children go to school. And therefore, with extensive consultation, we then had to make sure that actually everybody buys into making sure that this space becomes a habitable space, a space where children can play safely, a space where infrastructurally there will be surveillance that takes place. Because if you look at these houses, there is no way that you can actually be surveillancing that there is a safe way that children can play there. And if you look at this shack, you can actually go behind the shack and you can be marked and nobody can do anything about it. And we had to actually make sure that we approach even the owner of that shack. And okay. And the process was making sure that the place actually becomes an open air public space where basically it can be electrified, it can be safe, and make sure that children can play safely. And all this process was to make sure that the people that are unemployed in Harare and in Kailita broadly participate in actually beautifying the area. And this is how the place looks like as a finished product. I want to come back and say and show you that because of the crime that was there, that sport VPU concept is that you actually make that and make it active box. And that active box is, if you can see, it's elevated. They've actually built in such a way that it's a double-story building, where basically, as you come in Kailija, you would actually see it. You can actually make sure that it actually is yellow. And when, excuse me, when you travel and you feel that you're getting lost, the patrollers are actually located there, and they're able to look around and keep surveillance in the area. And they can see if you're in trouble, and they can talk using the two-way radio system, and they have a relationship with the SAPS, and the police station is not too far from here, and they can actually be able to communicate and begin to rescue somebody who seems to be in trouble. And also, as people walk in the pathways and they feel that they are not comfortable, they have a right to go into that house and actually request the patrollers to accompany them safely to their home. And the way this house...
You've made your point. Move on.
Okay, this is how that detention point has been changed and made sure that actually it's a play field for children, and also it's actually can be used by the children to play soccer in the evening. And also it has this mosaic has been done by the ladies that have been trained to actually build the tree, and the VPU formed relationships with different organizations that are operating in Kailija, and then women have been trained and they get paid to do that. And that tree was actually the way in which they're actually showing how the project is giving hope to them. And this is actually the conversion of the hall that was just an ordinary building, which is actually now going to be a multi-purpose building where there will be early childhood development program, a library, and where you actually train also the educators in terms of capacitating them further. There's a tender that is out there, and the approach is that you actually make sure that Kailija people that actually get involved in entrepreneurship get an opportunity to build the structures themselves so that we create more opportunity. This is a Wamfundo, a school where basically there has been an opportunity for people to actually forge relationship across the departments, where VPU approached the Department of Education and province requested to make use of the school grounds, and the school football was used, and the building was made, and then there was a clubhouse and the accommodation at the back, and then provide people to actually provide surveillance at the school premises, which is used by the soccer clubs throughout the day. Crime statistics has been reduced because the safety and security is monitoring the crime statistics within the Harare area, which was actually a problematic area before, and make sure that there is interaction and give that feedback to the provincial department, and make sure that also there is capacitation that takes place. Some people then become volunteers for the extra subs recruits, and make sure that also there is more training that is made available. The volunteers in terms of that actually patrollees are not paid, but they're actually trained, and they've set up a cooperative, and that cooperative then give tenders to the projects for VPU, and that's how they generate income for themselves. And the lifestyle actually is actually getting much better. And there's vibrancy in the community because they know that all the jobs that actually are actually arising from VPU, they have an opportunity to tender for them. And also there are schools programs where young children actually are actively involved in different programs in the VPU program. It's an exciting program, and there's an arrangement that once a VPU program leaves the area, those buildings would actually be made available for the community to do maintenance and generate income out of that. And the city has already had an arrangement with the Kailisha Community Trust so that the money for operations is actually made available. Then they can actually be paid out of the budgets from operations to make sure that the maintenance takes place beyond the life of those bilateral agreements.
Thank you very much. We always have to when government tackles crime properly.
Just a question of when I'm not sure whether you're operating yet in Kuyasa or whether you're going to Kuyasa. Given that there's been a whole lot of groundwork done in community organizing around the solar heaters, do you have to redo that now in a different context, or how do you coincide with the work that's already been done in Kuyasa?
Okay, Alistair is going to answer.
Okay, in Kuyasa, our focus currently is around the new railway station, which is part of the rail extension. So the rail extension's been developed in Kailisha. There's a new station at Kuyasa and a new station in Makaza. And what we look at around that station, which is just next door to the Kuyasa housing development with the energy efficient buildings, we look at how you can develop a safe built environment, with our focus being on the public environment and the shared facilities up front. In other areas of Kailisha, what we're looking at is places which have been poorly designed, where there's been a lack of partnership with the community, and how do you fix? So in Site C, for example, it's incredibly congested, there's no urban management, it's impossible to police, and there's a very high violent crime rate. So it's a big challenge to change Site C. You know, it's a question of restructuring, fixing, establishing partnership. In Kuyasa, there's a lot of vacant land around the station, so we do it right up front. We show perhaps how it can be done up front appropriately.
Marianne?
Sorry, can I just add on? I think the approach in terms of projects that are taking place in Kailisha is not competition but collaboration. What happens is that people that get trained with the retrofitting project, they actually become resourceful for projects. Like for instance, when I actually showed on Precinct 3, when you say houses are for surveillance, it means around that detention pond, there are houses that are going to be built. Therefore, it means from that pool of plumbers or builders that are going to be there, there's a database system that is run by Kailisha Development Forum, which he knows. They then actually become a resource for those contractors that are available. Therefore, they are not only solely for that program for Kuyasa retrofitting, they become skilled resource that is available for Kailisha and other areas. We then need to collaborate on programs that actually upskill people and better the life of people of Kailisha.
Marianne?
Well, it looks like a lot to me, but I just want to ask two questions. One, that the budget is about 500 million, which is quite a lot of money for something like this. So I wanted to know, because of the budget that's so large, is this a project that can be replicated? Because it's very, the funding is very unique. And then I see that in your notes you say it can be mainstreamed by 2013, that you're hoping to mainstream it. If that happens, then who funds it? If you're mainstreaming it by 2013?
I think the approach of this project with respect to integrated development, and that's the important point, it's integrated development. This project includes the services generally which municipalities and some provincial government departments would offer as a package within a community. So what this project is showing is how you can do things differently to have a sustainable and safe outcome. And obviously, I think to be able to show that, we've got to be in a position where we can drive the project within certain identified areas, so we can show through best practice how it can be replicated. Now we've been put into a position by the German Development Bank where they've given us grant funding of about 15.5 million euros. So that's put us into a position with a sound methodology to leverage money out of government departments and National Treasury. So National Treasury have bought into this program, and in fact they're using us now through their neighbourhood partnership development grant program to give training, also in township renewal program, to other municipalities across the country. So it's definitely replicable, and I think the projects which we do, which make up this, it's taxi ranks, libraries, sports facilities at schools, pedestrian walkways, development around stations, public toilets. There's a question of kind of doing it properly and in an integrated manner. Typically, for example, if government is investing in a community node or an economic centre, what would happen is they'll construct a public square, a cash office, and maybe invite Pick and Pay to come in to build a little supermarket, then they put the spaza shops out of business, and then government walks away.
Yeah.
And you sit with the unsustainable kind of community node, which is supposed to be the single point of access to the community for services, but it ends up becoming a client hotspot. So what we show through this program is we actually drive the integrated control of the money. We allocate it to the line departments.
Shorter answers.
That
because
makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Complex project.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to
So,
ask.
Simonile?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Simonile? Sorry.
There are many projects happening in a particular community, and one of the things that we're focusing on here is impact. And I mean, I find it difficult sometimes, and I used to work for NGOs as well. How do you claim that you have achieved a particular impact in a particular community where there are many other projects that are also there, which may very well contribute towards that? So when you say, for example, that you have reduced the crime rate by 2%, how can you really be sure that that's because of your efforts, of your interventions?
Okay. I'm mindful that I must be brief.
No, I'm going to give you 1 second.
Okay. The baseline study actually is baseline information, where basically we said these are the number of spaza shops that were not sustainable. These are the young people that were actually idle, committing crime, rape, and so on, identifiable. These are the mothers that are saying, we are so scared to walk in the streets after 5, okay? And then what we do, we then said, fine, what are the interventions that we're going to have? Let's then have a program where we have mosaic, where we train women to do the mosaic, and then there's disposable income that they take back home. We have young people that begin to actually get involved to say, actually an NMT that was done to make it possible for people to walk, which now is where young people jump for people when they go to work. They actually fix the lights and make it work. Then we've got statistics for people that work in projects, set up enterprises where you actually set up as a cooperative of young people and then say, we train you for actually having to make sure that you earn an income, you open a bank account, and you carry on, and you have testimonies. One other thing that the VPU has, it has a reference group meeting once a month, and any person has a right to come to a reference group and listen to the opportunities that are there, so that they can take an opportunity if they wish. So it's not about leaders, it's about any other person who lives there who wants to do it. And that's how you measure the popularity of the people see the difference. And then SDFs.
From that explanation, you can take the credit. He's only a law professor, he messed up.
I want to ask how eco-friendly or sustainable are your constructions of buildings?
Okay, we do energy efficient buildings or green buildings.
And
Not-
lighting, LED lightings, and
Yeah,
I see
we've got-
there's a very green pitch. I mean, how do you, for example, water this pitch?
That pitch is the sump of the detention pond. So it's the pitch which is closest to the water table, and it's designed to flood at least 3 times a year. So that detention pond is a multi-purpose facility, and that pitch doesn't even require much watering because of its closeness to the water table. So it's to show that within the physical environment, things can have a dual purpose. And the building, certainly there's a building which is now constructed in the corner here. It's had photovoltaic cells installed on the roof. It's got a battery bank, and at least 50% of the complete electricity is served through solar on that facility.
Very cool. I think Impumelelo should be mayor of Cape Town. Alistair can do all the green buildings. It's so nice when the municipalities do stuff. But also that Mosaic, one of our previous award winners, has been used in the anti-crime prevention and stuff. So I just love, she told us, the UWC law professors, you know, like baseline studies, that inform the work